Hey guys, welcome to today's webinar. Really great to have you guys here and running the webinar today. I'm really excited to share the next part of the journey with you guys and impart the 3-minute coach information. I hope you've had a really great week and really looking forward to hearing how things are going for you. And so for those that are listening to this recording, I would love to hear what's been happening in your world. And so please make sure you let me know what's been happening. Let's not do it that way. Let's get started this way, and start the webinar today. Really looking forward to sharing the information with you. So let's have a look where we've been on the journey so far, and again, love to hear a little bit about how things have been going for you. And so we've looked at time, and we've looked at removing fluff, managing state. In our first week, second week, it's all been about focus and joining the dots and starting the process of feedback loop questioning. And so I'd really love to hear what's happened with your feedback loop questioning and how you've gone with that, and answer any questions that you might have about that journey. We're going to do a little bit more on that today and to start to complete that picture, and really start to look at how we master the feedback loop process, because again, it's a really powerful process that will allow you to go deep really fast. And in fact, I used it in a seminar I ran last night, live audience, and from zero to issue took us 4 questions and about 10 seconds or 12 seconds or something like that. So when you master the art, it can be really, really powerful, and it'll definitely help you to chunk your time down. And so, so I'd love to sort of hear how you've gone with it. I'm going to give you just a few minutes to type in and just hear a little bit about what your experience was. Again, if you are not on this call, because I know we changed the time, so it's been a bit hard for some of you to get on the call. I'd love to have an email from you or even a phone catch up just to hear how you've gone, because I think part of the success of this program is going to be your mastery of this technique. Certainly not the only thing, but certainly one of the key things to help you to have success. Is the adaptation of feedback loops. I'd love to sort of hear how you've gone with that, and what your experience has been. So let's just have a quick look, and let's see. So Joanne said that says, what does she say here? She found that she started going round in circles, and so sometimes that can happen. Generally, that happens when we get to a space called the moment of truth, and it's something I'll talk a little bit about today. And so we have to learn a process to break through that circling. And I think I did talk a little bit about it last week, but it's certainly almost like a sabotage pattern that clients will employ to stop them getting right to that core issue. And I know, logically we say we want to get over these things, we want to move forward, we want to have more success, but subconsciously we'll often sabotage that. So sometimes what will happen is that the going round in circles is often more about the client than it is about you. And so we have to use some quantum techniques to be able to jump people over that barrier and into the next possibility. Excellent. Thank you for that. Leander says, yep, been going well, and loves how fast it works. So Leander's already noticing things chunking down time, which is really, really great. So well done on that, Leander. That's great. And let's see what else we've got here. And Chris says that. Yeah, okay. So Chris has said that he's hit a brick wall a few times, and still isn't clear about how to start some of the questions. So, um, excellent. So I think there are certain language patterns I use when I'm playing the feedback loop game, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that as we go through today. Um, and I think that. Yeah, the way you run the questions is absolutely critical. And if your questions aren't crafted in the right way, then you tend to hit roadblocks, or you tend to get to dead end answers, or you tend to have answers that don't give you anything to go with. And so I think it's really important that you get clever with your questioning. And so things around, as I think I mentioned before, the shorter the question, the better. So the shorter you use the question, the less you think about it, the better. And so a lot of people, when they start this process, tend to elongate their questions. And so they make the questions longer than it actually needs to be. And I think that can that can then lead to these dead end responses. So the key is to keep the questions really, really short. And so, in my world, I reckon the ultimate question is where you don't say anything, or you say one word, is the ultimate question. Um, but in the meantime of getting to that point, then things like, tell me about, or tell me more about that, or those sort of really short, sharp questions are the key to, to really having success out of this process. So, really, really important to chunk your questions down and make them as short as possible. For those that have just arrived, because I've noticed a couple of people have just arrived, for those that have just arrived, we're just talking about how you went using feedback loop and the stuff we talked about last week. And so we're just typing into the box, some feedback on that. So that's what we're doing. So if you've got any feedback, that'd be great if you could ask the question. So we've just finished answering a question from Chris, which was all around hitting roadblocks, and really it's about how you frame your questions up and making sure they're really short, sharp, and to the point, and right on. What I call right on song. I think at the end of the day, there are only 13 questions that you can answer, or only 13 ways to start a question, and I'm going to share that with you as we sort of go down the track. But there are only really 13 questions that you can ask. So I'm going to share that with you at some point to help you with that. But in the short term, I think the important thing is to make sure that that you're being really tight with your questioning, and making sure that you're not elongating questions. You're just making them as short as possible. The shorter they are, the better. And also, the less you think about it, the better. Because sometimes what we do as coaches, we're trying to solve the problem or come up with the solution or the answer. And I think that can be often a fatal mistake. So I think it's really important that we don't try and come up with the answer or even think about the answer. So the less you think, the better. And so it becomes a really great technique as long as you're not thinking too much. So try and, where possible, not to think too much about the process or what's happening, and rather just follow the rules. So follow the system, because you're going to be a lot more effective when you do. So, and that's the key. So at some point, I'll share the 13 questions with you. Um, some of those questions revolve around, the quantum leaping process that I alluded to before. Things like questions around, let me just grab it here. Things like, questions that start with what if, or how is, or, what, for what reason is another one. Tell me about, yes, but you can use how is or how does that fit. Uh, And so the quantum leaping questions generally start with what about? So tell me about, or what about this? And in a quantum leap situation, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the webinar, we're jumping people from one reality into a possible new reality. And so if people start going round in circles, like Joanne mentioned before, one of the ways to get them out of that is to start quantum leaping them into another reality. So we'll have a bit of a chat about that as we go through. So this week, what I want to focus on, so last week obviously was focus, join the dots, feedback. Today, it's all about laser, so getting right to the point. So what's the point? What's really, really going on? What is it that they're really here for? And a lot of the time, clients think they know what they want, and they think they know what they're there for, but they're more often than not, they don't. And so we have to really make sure we're containing and controlling the situation and making sure that we're identifying the points and really getting down to that point as fast as possible. And so I think when we use laser vision and really laser right into that point, then we're going to be able to be a lot more effective. And so we want to get right to the point as soon as possible. Feedback loop questioning is obviously going to help you with that process. It's going to help you take you into the issue and get you closer to the point. But I think there's some other tools and techniques we can use to either quantum leap that so that we do it a lot faster uh, and and also become more accurate with that. Because again, some clients are going to come with the point, or they think it's the point. Our job is to tap in behind that, and so there's a process that I look at, around the words, behind the words, and looking at how do we go deeper and go behind what actually is actually going on and what they think is going on, because your value is going to be in extracting insights and sharing with clients things that they didn't even think they needed or thought they knew, but when you say it, they go, of course, that's it. So creating those aha moments, those insightful moments, is really, really critical, especially if you're going to start value selling your practice rather than selling by time. You want to make sure that you're extracting those amazing sort of magical moments where they just get this, incredible aha. And so I think it's really important that we, get to that point as fast as possible. And so we're going to use some laser stuff to do that. So part of it is around the art of the ask, which is obviously some of the stuff we talked about last week. We're going to go into it a little bit more detail, because when we start getting to the point, we start getting really to the show aspect. So we talked about ask, show, and tell throughout our process. And I think when we start, getting to this point, we're actually moving into the show piece, where we really need to get right down to what is the point, what's really going on beyond what they think is going on, because 90% of the time they don't know really what's going on. They just think they do. And I think what happens is they just get this really misguided aim where, they think they're going for something, or they think that, there's one thing happening when really all along something else is happening. And so our bias and our belief systems and our past traumas and past realities are going to affect and cloud and change the current reality. So, most people can't see what's really going on. And it's only because, the wood through the trees scenario, where you're so close to the situation, you actually can't see the truth of the situation. Plus, we live in a biased world where we are all biased. And even when we say we're not, we're absolutely biased. And there's tons of research to back this up throughout the US and throughout the world that shows that even when we don't believe we're biased, we absolutely are. And I think a lot of the time bias is a safety mechanism, and um, it helps us to know that we're safe. If we can be biased, which is really putting someone in a box, then we can be safe. And I think the same happens to us, is that we bias ourselves, and so we overlay our past experiences, we overlay past reality onto a future or current reality, and therefore we make up a story about how things are going. Excellent. Thank you for that, Leander, saying my screen is frozen. So I'm busily just talking away, not even looking at the questions. And it seems that it's like that. Let's just have a look. and that's all dropped down now. So just let me know, guys, when you can see my screen. I know there's a whole lot of stuff coming up at the moment. I'm just trying to unfreeze things, and so let's just try and pop out of there. So just type in what you're seeing now, if you could, guys, and yeah, because I don't want you to be stuck at how did you go, because we have moved on from that. All right. So yeah, maybe if I'll keep going, and hopefully some of you are seeing it, and some might have getting sort of mixed messages here. So let's just keep plowing on and see how we go. So I think some of the time misguided aim because of our bias and our psychology. I think the next thing is that if we have a misguided aim, then we're going to miss the target. And so the power of coaching is to help people hit their target. And so if we're not driving the session, if we're not being really clear about the session, if we're not getting laser point and really getting right into the center of that target, or what's going on that's stopping them hitting the target, then obviously we're not going to be doing our job. So we've got to make sure that we're really getting onto that. And I think the other thing that happens is that that the client then becomes really mamby-pamby, and so I see this often. And I think one of the most powerful things that has come out of the 3 Minute Coach for me is that people stop being mamby-pamby, and so a lot of the time people people become really mamby-pamby about stuff, and so. All right, so I'm just going to, don't do that. I'm just going to do this and see if this helps, because I'm still getting a note from some of you that that the screen is still frozen. So I'm glad it's on How Did You Go? That's wonderful, but I need it to be further on. So why would it be freezing? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a couple of things here to just be patient and see if this helps. I'm just going to reset that, and then I will reset one other thing, and we'll see if that helps, if that comes up. Let's do that, and I'm just going to undo this, and so hopefully you're not seeing anything now, and love to, if you guys can keep typing in and just tell me where we're at. I'm just going to click this back on again and see if anything else has popped up. Now, I've got some yeps. Does that mean it's all good to go now? I'm assuming that is. So let's just keep going. And hopefully, great. We're on track. Yay, fantastic. So I apologize for that. So let's just talk about, so mamby-pamby. So I think we want to get away from mamby-pamby. Like I said, the 3 Minute Coach process, just help me to help my clients get really focused and stop being mamby-pamby. And I think long sessions can, by default, lead to some of this. And so we want people to be right on. But I think at the same time, coaches are their own worst enemy, in that they allow the mamby-pamby to happen by being mamby-pamby themselves. So I think really important to show that you're definitely right on song. And laser for me is about that. It's about bringing your A game, being right on song. So I'm now flicking through some slides. So hopefully you can see the next slide. Let's just have a look here. Yep. So let's go back to that one. Let's go back. Great. So I'm now on Uncover the Issue slide. So you can just let me know in a sec if you can see that. And so I think when you are on laser and you're really, getting really clear about that, I think what happens is that you get really clear about uncovering the issues that's really going on. I think what you also find is that you really cut to the chase and you start to know what the cause is. And in my world, unless you can see something, you can't change it. And so for a lot of clients, we want to uncover what that issue is, what's really going on for them, and we want to make sure that they're clear about what's the thing that's stopping them. And it looks like we're still freezing, which is really interesting. So I'm going to try this again and see what happens. and see if this cures it again. So let's just do that, and let's pull this up again and see what happens. So I have no idea what's going on today, and I really apologize. It's been working perfectly fine for every other except today, which is great. So hopefully you guys can see the slides that are coming up. And so I think the other thing that happens, uh, uh, great. So I just so you got to know the cause, which is really good. So I think, yeah, I think when you get laser clear and you uncover the issue, you know the cause, then what that's going to lead to is your ability to empower the change. And from a coaching point of view, that's one of the key things that we're obviously doing is helping people to change. Yeah. And empowering them to move to another level of reality. And so again, if we're allowing mamby pamby, it's going to take longer to get to where they need to get to. And so for me, it's all about speed. Let's get someone from A to B as fast as we possibly can. Let's not have them mamby pamby around. Let's get them really, really moving and moving fast. And I think when we start moving fast, then everything around us starts moving fast. And so I think if we can chunk our coaching sessions down to also replicate that, then clients, organically get that feeling that, wow, things, we've got to move things. I've got to get moving. And they inevitably do. This whole process doesn't mean that you don't give them some time if they need some time. Yeah. So from time to time, clients are going to potentially need extra time. And so sometimes with breakthroughs, we may need to give them a little bit of extra time for processing. In a lot of cases, we don't, but sometimes we do. And you can always revert back if need be. But I think on the whole, the greater part, we can actually, move things. Okay, move things faster. And so I reckon I reckon we can get things moving a lot quicker. Now I'm just doing about 10 things at the same time here to try and get this screen working properly. I'm just going to leave it like this because I'm just hearing that when I don't, it seems to be freezing. So I'm just going to run it like this for now, and it's going to be all good. So let's empower change. Let's make that happen really quickly. And so for me, let's have a look at 3 core principles. So the first one is, again, the feedback loop process, and I want to just deepen that a little bit more, for you guys today. And so I think, it's about now taking that through more of the process. So I really want you guys to now start to pitch through the process from the ask, the show, and the tell. And so I think it's really important that that we let's just have a look here that we get you to go, past just doing in the ask part and go through to the show and back and out through the tell. And so what I'd love you to do this week is to actually increase your use of feedback loop and actually use it through as much of the session as you possibly can. And in essence, we're going to use the feedback loop process through 90 or 80% of our session. So from the ask part, where we're asking the questions, listening to the answer and asking a question based on the answer, right into the show piece. And in the show piece, we're wanting to start using a quantum leaping process where we actually want to start segueing into what may be a disparate or slightly different topic to get them to jump over that moment of truth. And so I think what happens with clients at some point is that they'll hit this wall of moment of truth. And if you're really getting to the core issue, the core piece, then what's going to happen is they will hit this moment of truth. Some will hit it hard where they'll start reverting back on themselves and they'll try and sabotage it. Others will hit it really lightly and just move through it gently. But if you're right on song and you're right at that moment, right on the issue or getting really close to it, then a lot of people will want to try and bail out of it and everything will start to become really uncomfortable. And I think at that point, it's really important that you keep following the process so that, we can really go go deep fast and uncover what's really really going on for them. And so I see so many coaches bailing out at this point and not really wanting to go to that place that obviously they need to go to. And so I think it's really important that you push through, especially into the showpiece. And I think that's when the quantum leaping questions can start come in. And I'm going to teach you a process in a minute that will help you to use quantum leaping and will help you to jump into that into that next space really easily and quickly, and allow you to be able to connect with that deeper realm of what's going on. It's going to set us up beautifully for working with sensory intelligence and yeah, really being able to dive even deeper a lot quicker when we start looking at insights and igniting the aha through the sensory intelligence model. So, so I think, I think that's going to be important to do. So, from a feedback loop questioning, and I won't use my drawing today because of what's happening. You remember this slide where we looked at, ask a question, listen to the answer, ask a question based on the answer. Breaking that down into the 3 sections of a session, we've got ask, show, and tell. And so I think with this, those big black lines that you see there, hopefully you can see them there. I haven't heard that you can't right at the moment, guys. So that's no news is good news. That's really when you hit the moment of truth, when you get really close to that key issue or goal. And I think it's important to push past that. So I'm going to teach you a technique in a minute to help you to push past that, so that you can really get into this goal or issue. Because again, most people will try and avoid that. Most people will try and squirm away from it or try and move away from it. And so I think it's really important to make sure that we bump through this. And so I might use someone as an example today to run this next process, and which would be really great really great to just show you this a quantum leaping type process to help you to jump through this hoop. And not every client's going to come up with that, but I think when you start using this technique, you might find that this happens more often than not. And so I think it's really important that you jump through this moment of truth, which can be uncomfortable for everybody. And so I want to help you to make that different. So let's have a bit of a look at a process that I call first thought technique. And it's the setup process for igniting aha moments. It's a process that's going to really help you to be able to dive, right in the middle and be able to create quantum leaping moments for clients. And it's a really simple process, but it's a process that I developed over the last sort of 20 years. In particular, I developed it to teach executives, so leaders and managers, CEOs, to be able to connect with their sensory intelligence. So to be able to connect with those quantum moments. And be able to uncover the answer even when they don't think they know the answer. Because I have a belief that we all know the answer to everything that we need to know the answer to. That there's nothing we actually can't answer. And more often than not, we just get caught in trying to find the answer. And a lot of the time we try and find the answer with the wrong part of the brain. And so there are 2 hemispheres in the brain. There's the left and the right hemisphere. And so the left hemisphere, as we're probably all aware, is really about systems, procedures, statistics. It's about process. It's about it's about logical steps. It's also the part of the brain that tends to work with the past and the future. And so it's a part of the brain that when it's assessing a situation, it constantly looks into the past to see where it's had a similar experience. And if it finds a place where it has had a similar experience, so when it pattern matches, what ends up happening is that it then asks the question of, was I safe? And if the answer is yes, I was safe, then it says stay where you are. And so then it projects into the future about what needs to happen in this moment now, which is to continue to do what you're doing or stay where you are. The other thing that happens with the left brain is because of its past future bias, it also is designed not to give you a definitive answer about anything. Its job really is to give you a weighted view of the two opposing potential answers to any particular question. And so when you're trying to solve something, like when you're doing a moment of truth breakthrough, and when you're jumping into what's really going on, which a lot of this process will have you do, um, processing it with the left brain can be a long, elongated process and often will not give you the answer. So when you're talking to clients that are sitting there going, I'm not sure what the answer is, I've got these two potentials, I don't know which one to go with, then you know they're processing it with the left brain logic, and the left brain's not necessarily giving them an answer. So what most top CEOs and Harvard did a research project on the Fortune 500 CEOs in the US about 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and they asked them all one question, which was, how do you make your most crucial decisions? And all of them said that they get the data and they analyze the data, and then they go with their gut feel. Now, the gut feel response is actually a right brain response. And the right brain, which is more concerned with abstract images and color and feelings, um, tends to not have the bias that the left brain has. In fact, the right brain tends to work with the moment of now. So it only cares about what's happening in this given moment. It doesn't care about past future. It only cares about what's happening right this second. And so, what I've found in my research over the last 20 years is that when we think of something, generally the brain that gives us the very first response is the right brain. Because the right brain doesn't have to go into the past and into the future to give us an answer. It just goes with what we need right this second. So it gives us an instant response. Now, we live in a left brain bias world where those with higher or perceived higher left brain intelligence tend to get better jobs, tend to get paid more, and tend to have more success. Not always, but often. And those with a right brain bias tend not to, unless they're dead in the case of artists or musicians. And often when that happens, they become more famous. And so, in our respect, the right brain will often give us that more intuitive gut feel response, and it's often that instant response. And so we've allowed the left brain to drain out that instant response because the right brain is always the first brain that gives us an answer. Then the left brain comes in with its bias of it could be this or it could be that, or here's my past experience. This is what the future experience is likely to be, and therefore this is the weighted response of the answer. And so what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to integrate both sides of the brain. And so in our Western world, we've allowed our right brain to vanish or disappear. And like any muscle, if we don't use it, we tend to start losing it. So really important that we actually start to exercise our right brain, and the process we do that with is called first thought. Now, this is a process that I'm not only going to teach you guys, but a really great process to teach your clients, certainly as you're applying the 3-minute coach, because you don't have time to assess responses. You don't have 45 minutes to go over a response or to really deeply assess a potential situation. What you want to do is you want to get to the core issue, you want to get the answer and get them moving really, really quickly. And the first thought process is something that's going to assist you to do that. It's also going to help you to quantum leap when you use it on yourself, because you're going to want to connect with what's really going on at a deeper level, rather than trying to analyze what the situation might be. And generally, those responses come up in the flash of an eye. It's those gut feel responses where you go, there's something not right here. I'm just going to ask this question. And so a quantum leaping process is that you're hearing all of this stuff, you're starting to go around in circles, and you go, there's something not right here. and you just go with that gut feel. And the way we process that gut feel is through a thing called first thought. And I'm going to teach you the first thought technique now. And so what I developed was a left brain way of teaching a right brain process. Because what I found when I used to teach this, I found that the left brain would come in and would start sabotaging the right brain. And so the left brain would come in and go, oh, no, this is not real. Surely it's not that. It's got to be something else. I don't reckon it's that. And would start questioning the answer of the right brain. And again, people would then follow what the left brain said. And of course, the right brain muscle just gets weaker and weaker. And a lot of this has come up through schooling, where they teach us to trust the left brain, but they teach us not to trust the right brain. And so, so it's really important that we start practicing this and make sure that we're exercising the right brain. And this process is going to help you to do that. All right, so the process is called first thought technique, and it works like this. Now, normally I'd be drawing, but obviously today, for whatever reason, the screen is deciding to freeze. So I'm just going to show you right up front, and we're going to then play the game. So it works like this. There's 4 steps to it. Stop, sense, share, and act. The first part is that we have to stop the left brain thinking for a few seconds, right? We just have to give enough space so that we can hear the right brain response. And it doesn't take much to allow that to happen, but we've just got to quieten the left brain enough that you can actually consciously recognize the decision or the conversation of the right brain or the answer of the right brain. So one of the ways I do that is I get my client, or I get you guys, to just close your eyes and begin to focus on the noises that you can hear in the room. And the key with that is to not focus on what the noise is, but rather how the noise sounds. Because a left brain response is to focus on what the noises are, whereas a right brain response is how the noise sounds. So what we want to do is just allow our brain to stop for a moment by focusing on the noises in the room, not what they are, but how they sound. And as you do, you want to start asking yourself questions like, is that noise loud or soft? Is it fast-paced or slow-paced? Is it high-pitched or low-pitched? And just answer from a left brain point of view those questions around what the noise sounds like, but not what the noise is. And so I usually give people 30 seconds, 15 seconds to do that. It doesn't have to take long. We want to just, do it fairly quickly. So just enough time that they, have had 15, 30 seconds to focus on that. Then what you want to do is we want to get them to ask a question. Now, if you're by yourself doing this, then you ask the question to yourself. If you're with a client, you ask them the question. And so I usually start this process from a training point of view by asking really simple questions that actually don't matter. And when you're learning to use a muscle that you haven't used for a while, I think it's always wise to ask things that really don't make any difference, because it'll also help the left brain to keep quiet. If the left brain realizes that the answer doesn't matter, then it's more likely to give you space to hear it. So things like the questions I generally ask are things like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite fruit? What's your favorite vegetable? What's your favorite time of day? What's your favorite season? So they're generally the questions I'll ask to tease this out. So for you, for example, you close your eyes, you focus on the noises in the room, not what they are, but how they sound. And then I generally give the instructions. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to come up with the very, very first thing that comes into your head. I don't want you to think about it. I don't want you to analyze it. I just want you to tell me the very first thing that comes into your head. Do you understand? First thought. And you answer yes. I generally use the clicking process when I'm with clients because it's an embedded command. And when you click your fingers, people will answer. If you've run 3 questions up front saying, I don't want you to think about it, I don't want you to analyze it, I just want you to tell me the first thing that comes into your head, do you understand? Then the embedded command is when they hear a click, they answer. And so then I get people to answer the question. So what's your favorite color? First thought, blue. Great. What's your favorite time of day? First thought, morning. Great. What's your favorite fruit? First thought, banana. Right. What's your favorite vegetable? First thought, capsicum, whatever it might be. Now, the litmus test to this, because the sharing part is that they share the answer. When you're doing it privately, you share the answer with yourself. Now, the litmus test is that if you come up with things that when you logically think about, you go, but blue isn't my favorite color, and I don't like banana, and I hate capsicum or whatever it might be, then you know pretty much that you're getting that very first thought. The other litmus test is often when you do that, abstract answers will come. So when you go, what's your favorite fruit? And someone says yellow, you go, that's a great response. Because because that's generally a right brain response. So if you go, "What's your favorite color?" and someone says bicycle, you go, "Great, that's a good answer." Generally, you can then they'll connect the pieces and go, "Oh, you and I, there was a red bike. I love red bikes, or I love red, whatever it might be." And so you go through the process of stop, sense, share, and then when you're by yourself and when you're teaching people to practice this, you want them to take an action based on the answer they got from their right brain. So one of the classics I get people to do in practicing is I go, on a lazy Sunday afternoon, there are two things you can do. One is that if you don't really have anything to do, so you could do anything, I get people to sit on a couch, close their eyes, stop their thinking, ask a question, share the answer, and then take an action on it. So the question is, what do I feel like doing now? First thought, bang, go do it. Right? Don't think about it. Don't analyze it. Just go do it. So if it says walk, then you just go walking. If it says watch television, then watch television. If it says whatever it says to do, just do. The other example I give is again on a lazy Sunday afternoon, and again this is just practicing and getting people to use that muscle again. Is that I get them to go to the fridge, right? So it's lunchtime, and I get them to go to the fridge, put their hand on the fridge, and close their eyes, and go, "What do I feel like eating now?" First thought, bang, and grab it. Doesn't matter what it is, just get it. Then again, ask the same question again. So with the bread, or with the ham, what do I feel like eating now? Bang, get it, and eat whatever it tells you to eat. Yeah. Now a lot of people go, "Yeah, but won't it tell me to eat chocolate or chips?" And I go, "No, 99% of the time, it won't tell you to do that. It'll actually give you exactly what your body needs because the right brain tends to be more in tune with your body than the left brain. So the left brain tends to be very focused on external things, whereas the right brain's very focused on internal things. It tends to process stuff through feelings, right? So it's sensing what's going on in your body, and more often than not, it'll sense what you need. And so when you're doing stuff like this from a right brain point of view, you'll often be getting exactly what your body needs. So it can be a fantastic tool to become more healthy. But what we want clients to do is to go out for a week practicing this exercise because if they can practice this exercise, when we come to quantum leaping or we come to the real core issue and we're wanting to try and get behind the words of what's really going on, then or try and help them to find a decision. So rather than logically processing the decision, we can actually jump into first thought and go, okay, let's go with first thought first and see what happens. All right, so do you turn left or right? First thought, bang. Yep, and we get them to go with that. Now we allow the logic to back up the answer. Yep, and to reassess the logic based on the answer we've come up with. And it's a free world, so they don't have to take the response that came up from the right brain. And I'm not necessarily saying that the right brain has the ultimate and the best answer. I'm saying it has the most intuitive and gut feel response. And from a big picture point of view, most of the best decisions in the world have been made based on gut feel, just what feels right, rather than the analysis of what the numbers tell us or the other stuff tells us. More often than not, gut feel gets us on the right path. So great exercise for you guys to practice because the way you can use it is when you get to that moment of truth, when you start getting into the words behind the words, what's really going on, you can actually quantum leap by using this technique, right? So you get to that moment of truth, clients start backtracking, and you go, great, what's really going on here? First thought, right? And bang, it tells you something. Then frame a question around that. So I generally get clients to stop. So I go, just stop for 1 second. I think about it. I do my first thought technique in my head. And then I go, tell me a bit about this. And it could be totally different to what you've been talking about. But I found in my experiences that 9 times out of 10, it opens up some whole new possibility. And you really chunk down really deep, really, really fast. So it can be an invaluable technique to be able to process that. So I want you to go out and practice that this week. The other thing I want to just have a really brief chat about is assessing people and being able to assess people really quickly. And look, I know there are a lot of assessment tools out there. Your Myers Briggs, your disc profiling. There's a ton of profiling tools out there. But I think as coaches, and some coaches I know you guys use profiling tools, and that can be really great. But a lot of the time, you don't have access to that, or you're not using that. And so, for me, I look at a couple of aspects with people. I think that there are only three shapes in the world: there are squares, triangles, and circles. And so everything else is made up of those three shapes. And so I reckon at a real base level, there are only three types of people in the world: squares, triangles, and circles. And I think if you can pick which one you're dealing with really, really quickly, then you're going to be able to language it better and be able to chunk down much, much faster. So I'm going to introduce this concept this week, and we might talk about it more next week. And I reckon that there are two aspects to this. There's an internal representation aspect, and there's an external presentation aspect. So internal drivers and external presentation. And I reckon we're squares, triangles, or circles in both of those cases. And sometimes people have an external representation or presentation that's different to an internal driver. And I reckon in most cases that is what happens. And so I think what we have to do is we have to understand the external presentation so we can talk their language, but we also have to understand the internal driver so we can get right into the heart of it and we can open up new possibilities for them. And so some of this is based around some of Matt Church's work around contextual content people, right brain, left brain. And what I've done is I've just sort of blown this up into a deeper image of that and looked at both working with the three brains, which is the mind brain, heart brain, and gut brain, but also looking at context, concept, and content driven people. And so I think in most cases we tend to prefer to either see the big picture, be contextual, or look at the absolute detail and be content driven. I think we also have a bias of left or right brain, and I think there are three things that happen there. So left brain tends to be based around IQ and is represented by a triangle. The right brain aspect, so if we go far right, generally that's around sensory intelligence, which is really the intuitive, and circle. And so if you're very, very right brain, you tend to be circle orientated. If you're very, very left brain, and you tend to be triangular. What sits in the middle is an emotional intelligence where we look at the square. And so contextually, if we look at the big picture, it's represented by the circle. If we look at content, it's represented by the triangle. And if we look conceptually, it's represented by the square. And so I think if you can firstly assess someone's external presentation, are they contextually driven, content driven, or are they conceptually driven? I think then when you start working with people, you can start to dive a little deeper and go, are they left brain predominant, or are they right brain predominant, or are they or do they sit somewhere in the middle where they are more emotionally dominant? And so I think when we assess these things, then we can actually deal with that. And so we're going to be one of 9 things. You're either going to be mindfully contextual, mindfully conceptual, mindfully content driven. You're going to be emotionally contextual, emotionally conceptual, or emotionally content driven, or you're going to be intuitive contextual, intuitive conceptual, and intuitive content driven. And so I think if we can assess what our clients are really fast, we can actually start dealing with it a little bit, working with them at a deeper level. I'm not going to talk too much about this today, but rather just introduce the concept, and we'll have a bit more of a chat about it next week. I'm not even sure. We have a webinar next week. I'll check. We may have one more before the end of the year. I'll double check, and then so we'll look at this in a bit more detail and how we deal with each of the squares, triangles, and circles. How do we deal with each of those? Context, concept, and content can be a little easier to understand because we go, okay, if they're contextual, then we need to use big picture language. If they're content, we need to do small steps, and if they're conceptual, we can do either or. And if, from a mindful point of view, if they're more IQ related, then it's, we have to make sure we're using systematic steps, processes. If they're intuitive, sensory intelligence, then we need to use, more right brain concepts. Uh, and for those that are that way, then first thought technique's going to come really easy. And those that are not, it's going to be, we're going to have to train a little bit harder on it. And obviously, if they're squares EQ, then it's all about emotional. And so, running, coaching sessions with EQ or emotional people can be really tricky. And so, we have to work with that in a really intelligent way. So, I'm going to talk to you about how to work with those three shapes next time. And yeah, we'll start to use that and see how that if we can assess this really quickly, it'll help us to go deep really fast. And that's why I use this. I use this to go deep fast, and it can be really helpful to do that. So we are going to have a little bit of a look at that next week. So love to know what was most valuable for you. Love to hear about that. What was most valuable for you guys? Love to hear about that. If you could type that in. I'm going to give you the actions to take this week. So practice your first thought, keep doing feedback loop questioning, try and extend that out a little bit, and try and elongate that into the show and the tell, and just have a play with identifying the shapes. What shape, firstly, you are, and then what shape other people are. So yeah, love you to type in what's been most valuable, what you've got out of today. Next week, we're going to focus on insights. So, gaining insights, igniting the aha, using sensory intelligence. So, deepening some of the learnings today, really using sensory intelligence and being able to go deep really fast. So, Chris says the shapes are cool. Yeah, thank you. Joanne says need to figure them out. That's great. Leander, thanks for being on the line. I know you popped in a little bit late, but that's all good. I'm glad you got to see most of it. Love to hear what's been great for you. Yeah, fantastic. And so Adam says, "Yep, first thought. Loves the idea of first thought, and can't wait to get in and start practicing it." So, yeah. So, Leander says needs to spend some time working out the shapes. Yeah, just sit with it, just play with it. I'm not expecting, you to use it full on this week. We're going to talk a bit more about it next week, but just have a little bit of a play with that would be really great. So I apologize for some of the little technical issues today. I have no idea what's going on with that. Nothing's changed. I'm in the same venue, same place. So I guess that sometimes happens. I'm glad we sort of ironed it out, at least enough for us to be able to step through. Just remember, I've been uploading the videos onto the site. You should have an email by now with the login details to be able to get the recordings and also the slide decks. I'll check to see about a webinar next week. If we do, it'll be back to the same time, so Tuesday at 7:30. And if not, we'll be starting again after Christmas. So I'll send you that invitation just to let you know I'm back on the 20th of January. So it'll start that week, and we'll finish that off. Love to hear from you, those that couldn't make it today. Really love to hear how you're going, and love to just check in with you. Leander says, which shape am I? And so obviously I've worked with you a little bit, Leander. And so I think, in my eyes, and we can have a bit of more of a chat about this, I see sort of almost, external presentation, I think, comes from the real contextual piece. I think, though, that you're probably more conceptual than contextual. And I think you're very the emotional, right? So you're either square circle or square square. And I think if you sit with your truth, you're probably square square. And when you're trying to show the right presentation out in the world, then you do that square circle. And so that's just my assessment. So just have a think about that, have a look at that, and see where that sits for you. I think probably where you're heading from an internal driver point of view is you're heading towards circle much more. And I think you're probably still sitting in square. Now, this is fluid, right? This is stuff that moves all the time. So I think probably where you're heading is circle square. Probably where you think you should be from an external point of view is square circle. But I think your truth is probably circle square, and probably where you're sitting right now is square square. So I hope that helps. Yeah. and we'll talk about how we deal with that next week. And it will be a bit fluid, right? And so what we want to do by identifying this is to go, okay, what we want to help you to do, Leander, for example, is to be circle square and to really sit powerfully in that place. So part of what I use this for is to be able to direct people and help them to go to the place they need to be. And so a lot of this I just do intuitively. A lot of this I've just done in the background. I have actually never shared this before until today. This is actually the first time I'm really, sharing this model. So it's really exciting to be able to do that. And I look forward to sharing more about it with you guys next week. So have a fantastic week. Get into first thought technique. Keep practicing feedback loop. Love to hear a bit more about that when we catch up next week. If you haven't been on the webinar, love to get your emails about that. And really look forward to catching up with you guys soon. So have a great week and ciao.